Oh, in this video, I'll be going over commonly asked questions about the London Liberal Arts and Business semester programs. A little bit about me. My name is Melissa. I'm a study abroad student assistant, and I studied abroad in London on the Liberal Arts program in spring of 2023. And so this is a great video to watch if you haven't come to the Q&A or any of our pre-departure meetings, or if in the future you're just looking to learn more about the London Study Abroad program. So the first thing I'll get into is kind of like pre-studying abroad, some like packing tips. What should you expect to bring? And the first thing I want to direct you to is to take a look at the UP Study Abroad handbook. There is like a list of like packing recommendations for the specific items that you'll need. And my basic packing tips is that I would really recommend really being mindful of what you pack before you go, and think about the limited space you're going to have and everything that you might buy while you are studying abroad. I personally brought one big checked bag, one carry-on suitcase, and then a backpack. And then coming back, because I did collect some items, I bought a duffel bag in London. So I had two checked bags flying home. And that was pretty typical for other people studying abroad as well. And then in terms of what you should pack, definitely bring anything that you cannot buy in London, such as prescriptions, important electronics, contacts, things like that. You should have enough of here in the US before you go over. But anything like toiletries or food products, you can find all of that in London easily. So you don't need to worry about packing those sorts of things. But I would recommend bringing small travel size toiletries for your first few days, and then if you go on any weekend trips or program excursions while you're in London. And then for clothing, I'd say London is very similar weather to Portland. In my experience, this spring was pretty much the same. It snowed one day and barely any real snow, and it was rainy pretty often, so I'd bring a rain jacket and dress pretty similar to how you would in Portland. Although people in London definitely dress a little nicer, so there's not athleisure and loungewear out in public. People dress a little nicer, so that might be something you want to keep in mind while you're packing. And then, so tips for once you've arrived in London, arriving in your host country can be a pretty nerve-wracking experience. I was someone who'd never traveled internationally before, so this was my first time. So felt like kind of a big deal. But I recommend have a plan for once you get there, and you'll be able to figure it all out. Studying abroad definitely promotes a lot of independence. So when you first arrive to London, there's multiple airports, but most people usually fly into Heathrow. And when you're there, you'll go through customs. Actually, when I went, I just scanned my passport, but you may have to talk to someone and show them your visa. You just want to be prepared to answer the questions of why you're here, which is for studying abroad, and then the duration of your program, a few months, and then where you'll be staying, which you can say GEO London, which is the organization you'll be staying with. And then so how you get from your airport or from the airport to the accommodations might be tricky, but I would highly recommend taking the underground, especially if you fly into Heathrow. There's a tube station in the airport, which there are lots of signs. So follow the signs for the tube and underground, and you'll be able to get on a tube line. And then I would just use Google Maps to tell you which line to get on and off. And you can just get a simple day pass to get you to your accommodations. And then later on, you'll get a tube pass for all your travels. But if the underground feels like a lot, you can also take a cab or an Uber. There is a line of cabs at all the airports, so it's pretty easy. You just walk up and say, here's where I'm going, and there'll be cabs there to take you where you need to go. That's another option you have when arriving to London. And then um, as far as like orientation goes, you'll be arriving to London. You can arrive before your program starts, but the housing accommodations will start one day, and you should be there to check in that day. And then the next day, you'll have a few days orientation before classes start. So a little bit more about transportation in London. I did mention the underground getting from the airport. I have right here the tube map, which might be a little overwhelming, but I can tell you after just a few weeks of being there, this was the map I was like super familiar with. If you see this red like icon in the middle, I've put where the GEO London building is. So as you can see, it's quite central London. And there's all those different colored lines are all the tube lines to get you there. Um, so yeah, while you're in London, you'll have a Oyster card, which gets you free, well, it's included in your program cost, which will get you transportation on the underground and on all of the buses. And my best advice to navigate the buses in the underground is to just use Google Maps or City Mapper. I'd highly recommend is another app, which is really good with telling you like public transportation times and which line and which side of the road to be on. So that's a big recommendation I have. I'll also add you get unlimited rides on the tube and the buses with that Oyster card, as long as it's in zone 1 through 3, which is really all the zones you're going to need to get to. And then you have like a $20 extra bit to get you to other zones if you would like to extend beyond central London. So moving into coursework abroad, I have a bunch of pictures here about different courses that I took. Yeah, coursework is, I'd say, a little bit different than how coursework is here at UP. First of all your classes are going to be for 3 hours once a week, which we have some classes at UP, but while you're studying abroad, that will be all your classes. And then you will not have any classes on Friday. So that's something to keep in mind. The GEO program is usually quite small. This bottom left picture is actually every person on my program. And then our classes were like divisions of that group. So I have up here my theater class. There was only 5 of us in the class and our professor. It was quite a small class. But I really think that like added to the experience because you really get to know everyone. And all the classes were pretty interactive with the professors. And then yeah, beyond that, most of our professors are like European. They're not UP professors. They're professors that like GEO has hired. And they're all very knowledgeable about their subjects. Like for example, our art professor, we would go on lots of excursions in our art class. And so this bottom right picture is an art installation that we went to. So every single week, for that class, we would have about like an hour lecture. And then our professor would take us out to a different museum and she'd walk us around and kind of we'd have class outside in the city. And we did that for like our theater class and our history of London class. So there's lots of excursions and like reasons to leave the classroom in class, which really made it a lot more fun and engaging. Yeah, so then a little bit about housing in London. You're going to be in a flat or an apartment, a shared apartment with other students on the GEO program, which is likely going to be mostly UP students, but could also be students from University of Oregon or Pacific Lutheran University. But you will be in an apartment with other college students on the same program. And so for my situation, I was in an apartment with 6 people total, and then I had 1 roommate, so there was 3 rooms, and then we had a bathroom and then full kitchen, living, dining room, which you can see pictured here on the left. This was our flat, and it was very nice. We had a kitchen that came with everything we needed to cook. The accommodation came with like sheets and blankets, so you don't need to bring any like house things when you're thinking about packing. I also add that we had laundry in our building. So that was nice. You didn't have to go pay to like take your laundry and pay to do it somewhere else. So we had in-unit laundry. Um, but we did pretty much have to air dry everything, which is a cultural difference. They don't really dry their clothes as much. So be ready for that. And then here in the middle is a picture of my building. Um, I will say not everybody in my building was on the like GEO London program, but the building itself is owned by a study abroad company. So there were other students in the building that went to other colleges. So we kind of met some of them. So you'll likely be around other college students, even though you are living in a like separate apartment. Um, and I'll say housing is still in central London. We were in zone two, which is great for London. Most people who live in London live a lot further out. So the experience of getting to live in central London was really pretty special and pretty cool. And then for a commute to school, our commute was about 45 minutes, which seems like a lot, especially like from like UP, like living on campus. But that for London is a pretty good commute. So you really get to get your experience on the tube, and you'll find you can do homework on the tube and read, and it's like the commute isn't as bad once you get kind of used to it. Yeah. Oh, and then if you want, like talking about roommates, if you would like, if you know people before you study abroad, you can request roommates. I personally study abroad with some friends, so we requested two roommates, and then we were in the same flat. And then I was with other UP students who have become some of my closest friends. So if you want that, you can keep in mind. But if you don't know anybody on your program yet, you'll be assigned a roommate. Then talking about budgeting and shopping a little bit, um, while you're studying abroad, you're gonna be in charge of your own meals. There's not a meal program as there's not like a meal plan as part of the program. So you'll have to get used to grocery shopping or London has tons of amazing places to eat, whether it's like restaurants or little like market stalls. Um, so those are great options. But there's lots of grocery stores like Sainsbury's and Tesco's are big ones. There's lots of like little kind of like bodega-ish stores, and then there's a few like large stores that are more similar to like Fred Meyer's that we have here. Um, and in those grocery stores, I'd say they're very similar to the stores we have here in the US. And I'd say that groceries were a little bit cheaper in London than they were here, at least in my experience. And then talking about money, they use the pound. So you want to like check out that conversion rate before you go. I'd recommend getting a little bit of cash, but most places in London, they all take card. A lot of it takes like Apple Pay and tap cards. Um, so I'd recommend having a credit card, and I would just check that that card doesn't have an international fee because some cards do. And if you're thinking about getting a card, look for one without an international fee. And I'd say most places took like Visa, MasterCard, like the big named brands. But I will say if you have a Discover card, that was not accepted by a lot of um, like vendors in London. So keep that in mind when you're thinking about the type of money you're going to use while you're abroad. And then, so my like biggest expenses, I guess, were like personal travel. Um, but even that was like really budgeted for that. And it was less expensive than travel would be like here in the US by like quite a bit. Um, so I'd recommend looking for like the Euro rail. You can get a Euro rail pass if you want to take trains around Europe, or like EasyJet is a flight company where you get pretty cheap flights. And I recommend looking at like Hostel World if you want to find hostels for a pretty good price if you are traveling on your own outside of the program. So how was it like adjusting to a new cultural setting? And what did you learn about London's cultural values? I'd say as you're like thinking about it, London is pretty similar to the US, especially considering other places that you could study abroad. We speak the same language, and there's a lot of like cultural similarities. Um, so yeah, I'd say the adjustment wasn't too bad, but it is always important to like be mindful that you are like someone new in another country. and just be open to learning and hearing about all the like new experiences you can have in London. I think my biggest advice on like the like culture of London specifically is that on all the escalators, you always want to, if you're standing on an escalator, scooch all the way to the right. And if you're walking, you can walk on the left, and you always want to leave room for people to walk on the left. That's a big thing in London, so keep that in mind. But yeah, so then I'll talk a little bit more about program excursions on the GEO London program. There are excursions that are included with tuition, so you don't have to pay anything else to go on these. There's typically a trip to Edinburgh in Scotland that is an overnight trip. So they have a hostel included in transportation, and then they're all booked full of like things to do while you are in Edinburgh. So this picture on the left is of Edinburgh Castle, which we toured with our classes. And that was a really fun experience because everyone on the program went together and we got to like explore Edinburgh, and we got to do a bunch of like fun things. Like we went to a few museums, we did whiskey tasting, and yeah, it was a good time. And then in addition to that, you also go on a lot of like day trips. So with um, some of my professors, we went to Manchester and we learned about like the strikes and the miners' strikes, which we'd been learning about in our history class. So that was a really cool experience. And then we also went to Oxford, where we toured part of the university, and our art professor came with us, and she talked to us a lot about the architecture of all the buildings in Oxford, and that was super cool as well. And then for personal travel, so outside the program, you are free to travel on the weekends, like I did say. You get 3-day weekends. So me and my roommates did travel a lot on the weekends, kind of like every 2 weeks maybe. And then like for spring break, we went, and it's quite easy to get around because London's pretty central. Well, not central, it's pretty close to the European continent, and like yeah, there's lots of places to go. So I definitely recommend taking advantage of that while you are studying abroad. But also be sure to enjoy your host country and your host city, because like London is amazing and there's so much to do, so much that I didn't get to do. So make sure you're really soaking it in while you're there. And then lastly, just talk about how do I take care of your well-being while abroad. First, I'd recommend just like be mindful, like check in with yourself. Studying abroad is kind of a crazy experience. It can be fast-paced, you're far from home, it's a very different environment. And I really found myself relying on my friends, both the friends I made on the program, and keeping in touch with like my family and friends back home, which took a little bit of an adjustment because there's such a big time difference. So I'd really recommend being mindful of like setting up a time with people that you can talk to, because it can be a little difficult to like slip away while it's so busy. But that'd be my biggest recommendation there. And then I'll also say all of the staff at GEO London is so supportive. Like the three main people that work in the office are the loveliest people. So you can always lean on them if you ever need anything. Yeah, that's my little video. If you have any questions, as always, you can schedule a meeting with Holly Peterson, um, and she'll get back to you and help you out. Yeah. Thanks for watching, and have so much fun in London.